Content is intended to provide accurate information, however, is not intended as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult a financial, legal, or tax professional for specific information regarding your individual situation. Opinions expressed and provided are for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.
Welcome to Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. McIntire Retirement Services, Northwest Ohio's retirement planning resource.
And welcome into the program. This is your Game Plan for Retirement with Northwestern Ohio's resource for a common sense approach to planning for your financial, your investment, your retirement future. He is president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services. Chris McIntire here with us. And Chris, we always appreciate the time and the guidance that you provide.
Hey, good morning. Good to be with you today, Peter.
Always a pleasure, Chris. And we talk about sound financial strategies on each and every program. We give people tips on how to have more confidence and security in retirement. Today, going to be no different. We're going to talk about 8 retirement planning tips for 2022. And if you've got questions about your own plan, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to give McIntire Retirement Services a call. They are always standing by, willing to help and assist on an individual level to analyze your current plan, to review that plan, to structure the plan if need be, and to make sure that you are doing the best things for yourselves moving forward into your financial future. Give a call, 800-868-1194, the number to reach Chris McIntire at McIntire Retirement Services. You will speak directly with Chris. That's one of the benefits of this program. You've got access to the resource that you hear on the radio or watch on the podcast each and every week. Again, to reach Chris McIntire at McIntire Retirement Services, give a call, 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. And so, Chris, as we move into the content of the program today, these 8 tips for retirement planning in 2022. I guess to start first, let me ask you, are these new innovations for 2022, or are these more of kind of the time-tested strategies that we all just need a reminding of from time to time?
Yeah, I think, as people move their, get closer into retirement, they need to reassess some of these, let's call them the foundational tips here, if you will. If we got somebody that's still working for another 10 years or so, obviously their risk tolerance is probably going to be higher than somebody who's just getting ready to retire here in 2022. So, we'll have some different aspects depending on where you're at in the phases of money, so to speak.
Well, I know that one thing that is a little different, Chris, maybe we have gotten used to it, unfortunately, but COVID has certainly put a different twist and angle on the mindset of savers and investors, and particularly retirement planners. So that may be something that is a little newer for 2021 and 2022, is the COVID mindset that people have and what impact that has had on their anticipated timeline for retirement.
Yeah, no question about it. Even the way that we do business, obviously, we do a lot more Zoom appointments with folks here with the Omicron variant and just trying to minimize exposures out there. And, a lot more people are doing things based from home, eating out less. And, that plays into the economics of the United States economy and economies around the globe. And then the behavior of their investments and the characteristics that they take on going forward.
Well, it is something that has impacted our mindset, impacted planning, and you need to be aware of all of the ins and outs of a sound retirement strategy, but also, Chris, have that strategy ready and prepared for disruptions along the way. That is one thing that is certain to happen, is the unexpected. And so reviewing that retirement plan on a regular, recurring, ongoing basis, because it's not set it and forget it, because the world changes around us and our own life situation changes.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Yeah, life is what happens to plans, as we like to say. And, we deal with a lot of folks that are retired and they want to buy or invest in a second home down in Florida, for example. And the real estate prices down there have simply exploded. Okay, so now they're turning into rentals, and rentals are going up, obviously. So real estate, I guess, Peter, has been a wonderful investment performer, for folks to utilize. And we have certainly been incorporating some of that into our retirement portfolios as interest rates increase. That pushes down the prices of bonds that are already in circulation. pay lower rates than newer bonds that are going to come out. So that's been the tug of war for the conservative-minded investors here throughout 2021 and certainly going into 2022 with, what we're pricing in maybe 4 interest rate increases.
Well, over the past decade, Chris, the market has been fantastic and we've enjoyed the appreciation, but the recent times in the market have seemed a little bit more uncertain. We have seen a little bit of volatility here recently. Do you think that we're going to see more of that volatility throughout the year? And is that yet another reason why we need to review that plan?
Absolutely, Peter. As we look at the supply chain issues that have caused prices to go up, okay, inflation is now something that we're all talking about every day. And you and I on this program have talked about it. If you turn the clock back about 2 years, inflation was very low. It was something that we really didn't have to mitigate. And we said, look, these aren't normal times. At some point, inflation is going to come back. And you have to factor that into your income plan in retirement because, if inflation is running at 7%, right here in the United States, they don't include food or fuel in the cost of inflation. Okay. But let's call it 7%. In 10 years, you're going to need twice as much income to do the same things you're doing today. And I think everybody would agree as we get a little bit older, that it seems to, move at fast paces. So 10 years is like nothing anymore.
Yep. Okay. Well, we're talking with Chris McIntire, your resource, ladies and gentlemen, for sound retirement planning strategies, Northwestern Ohio. You have access to McIntire Retirement Services if you'd like to get that plan put together. And we are talking about 8 tips for retirement planning in 2022. Number 1, review your retirement plan. If you'd like to do that with Chris McIntire, pick up the phone, give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. And Chris, we all love to be aggressive investors as the market is moving up, but when we see volatility, we get a little gun shy pretty quickly. So number 2 in your list of 8 tips, reassess your risk tolerance. Why is this something that we need to do periodically from time to time?
I would say that, in 2020 and 2021, we had very good market performances. And now the market seems to be in a real tug of war situation between rising interest rates, supply chain issues, still looking for quality employment to fill in gaps in the employment picture here. In looking at some of these tugs of wars, in the month of January, the market was very volatile, especially the tech sector. So where people had been hitting home runs previously, they may not be hitting those home runs going forward. So assessing, where are you at on what's the pain threshold, if you will, and how much, of where we're at are you willing to give up for, potential future gains. And, as you and I both know, typically a well-balanced portfolio around somebody's risk tolerance is going to deliver them long-term satisfaction versus, hey, I had a good month last month, let's risk it again for another month. I mean, there's a lot of emotion in trying to figure it out from day to day, obviously.
And yet the investor mindset so often is, well, let it ride, just keep on going. Here's kind of the conundrum and the inherent conflict, Chris, is that as time goes by and we get closer to retirement, generally our risk tolerance decreases. The amount of our life savings that we're willing to lose actually goes down. However, because the market has been so good, the amount of risk most people are taking as a result of the gains that they've made is grown over the past several years.
No question about it. And that would be certainly a factor of the low interest rate environment. It's not like you could pull money off the table, walk into the bank across the street and get an FDIC insured CD at 5%. They basically pay next to nothing. And so, you were rewarded for the risk. And, what were the other alternatives? Burying it in the backyard, for example. And, we did have blockchain technology came out, Bitcoin, several of those other digital type currencies, if you will. And a lot of folks, ventured into those waters, and they've been volatile here as well throughout the course of 2022. And we would certainly think that to continue. And it probably even some of that Bitcoin and Ethereum and so on probably stole some of the thunder from gold, because people would normally be transitioning into gold as interest rates rise as an inflation hedge. And that's the traditional sense. And we have not seen that yet, but that may play out into 2022 as well, as some of the traditional inflation plays fall back into favor, at least to some degree.
So reassessing that risk tolerance on a regular and ongoing basis, important, ladies and gentlemen. Tip number 3, Chris, maximize your tax advantaged retirement savings. We've got some opportunities to have some tax qualification that gives us some advantage. We've got to decide which category to put things in, but wherever we decide is best for us, we want to really try with all efforts to maximize the amount that we are taking advantage of where we can save on taxes.
Yeah. And, a lot of times the government makes some changes or some adjustments that help workers. For example, in a 401k for 2022, you can put in $20,500. That's $1,000 more than what you could have done last year. Again, I'm assuming everybody listening today is over the age of 50. You get to put in additional dollars if you're over the age of 50, what they call catch-up contributions. And so that, lowers your taxable income. Obviously, a lot of companies now are upping their match as they're looking for quality employees as well. So there's some great incentives there. Health savings accounts, if you have a high deductible plan, that's a great tax deferred savings. You get to deduct it off of your taxes. You can invest some of the money within your HSA account into mutual funds, for example, like my wife and I do. And then when you pull those monies out for qualified medical expenses, that's income tax free. So it's kind of like a Roth IRA for health insurance, if you will, except you do get to deduct it off your taxes. So that couple of good pieces there, the 401k and the HSA plans.
Chris, a little bit of a curveball question here. Why does it seem that the government favors saving through our employer? Because I noticed that they upped the contribution levels and limits with the employer-sponsored plans, the 401k, but individual savers with IRAs, they kept those limits the same, which are really exceedingly low if we are truly trying to make progress toward retirement.
I don't understand it either, Peter, but I think it's easier and more common for people to save through their employer plan because it gets deducted from their paychecks. I think you and I have made comments on this. If people actually had to save and write their income taxes out on a quarterly basis, we'd have a revolution. But because they come out of their taxes and they've never missed it anyway, they don't pay much attention to it. So again, I think the government realizes people are more apt to have money deducted from their paycheck than they are their checking account at home, if you will.
They don't miss it if they never knew it was there in the first place. And if they can set it and forget it and put it on autopilot, maybe it'll actually get done. It seems a little step above the intelligence level of most initiatives to me, Chris, but fair enough. Yep. Number 4 on your list, analyze your current spending to estimate retirement income needs. So looking at current spending to estimate future income requirements, Chris. This is an area where a lot of people sort of just take a shot in the dark and a guess about what they'll need in retirement, or maybe base some assumptions on some things that may be outdated.
Well, and taking into account inflation here, Peter, would be the biggest piece. If inflation is going to run at 7%, even if it does that for the next 3 to 5 years, that's a significant amount, significantly greater amount of income you're going to need to do exactly the same thing you were doing before. And, what is the process that you're going to adjust from your investment mix to keep up with that pace of income. And, we've always talked about increasing income here on the show. You and I have to combat inflation, because remember, here in the United States, your cost of living adjustment for Social Security, isn't factoring in the medical expenses that older people pay that younger people are not. They use the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, for urban wage earners, not for retirees, which would probably be a better fit. And they've been talking about making some of those changes even.
Also does not include food or energy, two areas where we have really felt the impacts and effects of this inflation. Chris, as you are helping people to review their plans, I know you have seen a lot of different types of plans, style of planning, different scenarios and assumptions being made. But by and large, are you seeing when somebody comes into your office, maybe with the previous set of plan projections for retirement, that they are accurately reflecting and including some amount of inflation? I've just found that a lot of people basically make the assumption that they're going to need the same income 10, 15, 20 years down the road as they do on day one of retirement.
Yeah. And, it gets part of that goes into our other tip here, being proactive with debt. And the least amount of debt that you have, then the easier it is to control the spending. But let's face it, retirees want to travel typically. They're going to eat out more often because that's their part of their social life. And again, coronavirus has thrown a wrench into some of that. But for my clients that are down in Florida right now over the wintertime, they eat outside. So they're not like us here in the winter in Ohio where, they're still out and about. And many people are. And a lot of places you can dine, I guess, relatively safely, if that's the word that we're using nowadays. But, I go to Costco and get the basics that we need for home, a couple of times a month. And it amazes me that I can walk out of Costco, just my wife and I, and I spent $300 and I got 4 pieces of meat in all of that, so we really need to consider this inflationary environment that we're in when you go to the grocery store or even the gas station, for crying out loud. Look at the price of oil right now. Unbelievable.
Yeah, certain expenses may go away, like commuting cost, buying new clothes for the office environment, childcare expenses, maybe even, mortgages. That would be fantastic. But then, Chris, certain expenses arise that we may not have had to deal with as much before. More frequent travel is one that we look forward to, but then there's some that we don't. Medical expenses certainly seem to impact retirees to a greater extent and level than they impact us while we were still working.
Yeah, no question about it, Peter. As we look at this in this whole retirement scheme that we're going into, more out-of-pocket expenses for medications that people are having as well too. And, that's kind of our transition into the next piece here is, look, how do we control the healthcare costs as well? And, so there are a lot of elements that we're dealing with into 2022 that in 2019, when the world was normal, that we weren't facing those issues. And, we don't see those going away anytime soon. If companies can charge more money and people are still buying those goods, why would they lower their prices?
I agree. There's not a whole lot of motivation there for prices to come down if people are still paying it. And based on what I'm seeing on the store shelves, people are still paying these prices. So not a whole lot of incentive for deflation or prices to correct back to normal, or this to be transitory as has been advertised. I would like to jump back for a moment, Chris, to your number 5 tip: be proactive in dealing with debt. Now, this did not say eliminate all debt, but I know that used to be one of the benchmarks for retirement readiness, is that the home was paid off. One of the benefits of this low interest rate environment is that we're not paying a whole lot of interest on the mortgage payment, and we can actually afford a much bigger house as a result. My question with that being, how important is it to have the home completely paid off to feel confident in entering into retirement? Is it the same kind of requirement as it once was?
No, not at all, Peter. And I have a lot of people ask about that. Should I pay my house off? We only owe $50,000 on it, for example, and we're accelerating the payments. And they've refinanced and have it at a 3% interest rate. And the way that the stock market has performed here over the last several years, again, that's no guarantee going forward. But as long as you make more than 3% on that money, you got a positive arbitrage, we call that. And again, as you're getting closer to paying that mortgage off, more of that money goes on to principal than it does interest, right? That's how they amortize these loans. So, for a lot of folks, we all, sometimes we'll say, look, you've got the money to pay it off if you need to. That money's working in there better than what it would be in the house, because once the house is paid off, it's an idle asset. Yeah, your cash flow needs aren't as great, but we monitor that to make sure that we don't have anybody, you don't want to get underwater, so to speak. But, if somebody's going to buy a second home down in Florida, they're typically going to finance that. A lot of our clients are, and they may rent it out for several months and let somebody else kind of cover some of those expenses. So a couple of different ways to strategize it. Is it your primary residence? What's the interest rate? How much is left on the loan? If there's not a lot left on the loan, then they're accelerating that mortgage payment anyway. And then if it's an investment property, then we have another discussion on, what are you charging for rent versus, what the outgoing expenses are.
And I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I imagine, Chris, that for almost any saver, investor out there, somebody retirement minded, you would probably encourage them to have the mortgage and fix the housing costs for the duration of that period, rather than rent, where this inflation could affect their cost of living for the roof over their head transitioning into retirement.
Yeah. And a lot of people ask that, should I sell the house and downsize? And, what do I have? But, if you look at the cost of rent these days versus staying in your own place, a lot of times it's not even an argument.
Yeah. And it can go up every year. I remember back in college when I was in an apartment, every year there was that rent adjustment, which can make retirement especially a little bit more uncertain. So be proactive in dealing with debt. That is the tip number 5 in our 8 retirement tips for 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've got questions about any of these, if you'd like to talk over your situation, find out the strategy, the plan, the path that is best for you to optimize your retirement future and ensure that your dollars are working hard to help you achieve your goals, pick up the phone and give Chris McIntire a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194, 800-868-1194. Now, you spoke of it, Chris, refining the retirement healthcare strategy. On Facebook recently, I've seen a lot of these 10-year challenges where somebody posts a picture of themselves 10 years ago and today and lets everybody comment on the difference. I went and found my health insurance premium notification from 10 years ago and posted that. For my family, about 10 years ago, we were paying around $220 a month, and now we're paying about $1,150 a month. It's about a 500% increase over 10 years. I'm smiling. I'm not happy about it, but we certainly need to look at our healthcare expenses and formulate a plan, because those can be pretty impactful in retirement.
Yeah, we have a lot of folks that want to retire before the age of 65, for example, when they would transition to Medicare, and it's more affordable than private insurance at age 64, by all means. And some folks want to go on the Affordable Care Act or the Obamacare, depending on how you want to phrase that. And so if we have folks that say, look, I'm going to retire at 63, no questions about it, then if they've got money in Roth IRAs or savings accounts that they can live off, that makes their tax return, makes them look poor on paper, if you will, and they can get a better rate on their health insurance. So understanding when you're going to retire, how you're going to pay for health insurance before you get on to Medicare, that's where you really need to do some planning 3 to 5 years in advance so that you have some cash set off the side that you can live off of, or Roth IRAs that are tax-free and don't drive your income up. Now, remember, guys, the government at any time can legislate and make a change that says, hey, we're going to include Roth IRA distributions in your adjusted gross income, so to speak. Yep.
But as of now, Chris, for somebody that does want to retire before age 65, Roth IRAs or just after tax kind of money in the bank are a great way to fill income needs in that donut hole to where we could potentially have a little bit more affordable costs for health insurance premiums before age 65 is what I heard.
Correct. Yep. And, and I'm kind of we use a lot of different tax strategies. So it would be fair to point out that the cash value inside your life insurance policy, you can also take a loan against that, and that is tax free as well too. So a couple of good resources there.
Well, a lot of people have been thinking about retiring a little earlier than they once imagined because of our changing timelines, because of everything that's gone on in the world. So ladies and gentlemen, if that is you, this is one of the strategies that you can sit down with Chris McIntire and really look at and evaluate how to accomplish that and achieve that optimally for your situation, and make sure that you are doing the best things to have controlled expenses moving into and throughout the future, protecting the nest egg as much as possible. There are some ways to do that, and Chris can show you how through that optimized retirement plan. Pick up the phone and give a call, 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. Kind of a scary stat, Chris, is that Fidelity recently found through a study that the average couple will pay over $300,000 after age 65 just on co-pays, deductibles, and premiums. That's a heck of a lot of money. Now, of course, some of that's going to probably come to us along the way through our Social Security income, but it's still money that is out of pocket going to those medical expenses. And that's without the potential for more extensive care needs. So we really need to plan for that, is the bottom line. One way to do that well in advance, tip number 7, Chris, is maximize your HSA contributions. Now, not everybody has an HSA, but where we do have that available, we should definitely be taking advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you can put in, I think it's about $8,000. Forgive me, I don't have my tax cheat sheet in front of me here for 2022. That means you don't have to pay tax on those contributions. That money you can actually invest if you have an HSA account that has investment pieces in them. So what I do for my wife and I's is I always keep some cash in there in case she needs to get glasses. And so we always have cash within our HSA account. And then we have investments in our HSA account and want to maximize that. And, our goal is to have at least $100,000 in our health savings account, like Peter said, to counteract some of those out-of-pocket expenses that we know are coming into our retirement. I have a client and she had an article, I suppose it's probably been 5 years ago, and it was $250,000 for healthcare out-of-pocket expenses. And like Peter said, I think you quoted Fidelity on that one. It was $300,000. So there's the inflation with healthcare, a heck of a lot more than what it is for, the pre-retirees versus the post-retirees.
Well, that money's got to come from somewhere. So, Chris, rounding out our list of these 8 retirement planning tips for 2022, understand your retirement income options. There are numerous ways that we can generate income from our assets and portfolios. And Chris, we need to really understand, dig in, and get educated on what all of those options are, the benefits that they possess for us, and the drawbacks, because everything's got a little bit of both.
Yeah. And as you and I have said on this show for 10 years that, look, there is no such thing as a perfect investment. So when it comes to income options, we have some clients that have a lot of non-IRA money, and we use a lot of dividend stocks to pay them dividends out. Okay. Their income might be low enough where those dividends are qualified dividends and they're taxed at the capital gains rate. Okay, which may be very favorable to them given their income tax bracket. They might not pay any capital gains on those dividends because their income is so low. Typically you used to be able to use, in a real interest rate world, you could go into a bank and ladder out some certificates of deposit and get different interest rates at different periods of time. Obviously, that's not a very viable solution at this point in the interest rate world. You have bonds again. different types of bonds pay different types of interest rates here. And, the risk with bonds now is as interest rates go up, the value of those bonds goes down. So there's some pain involved in that. Real estate is certainly a viable investment. Like Peter said, if people can't afford mortgages on homes, they're going to rent apartments. Well, if you are invested in those apartment buildings or commercial buildings, and we do a fair amount of that here at our practice with some publicly held mutual funds and some publicly traded real estate investment trusts, not the privately held ones, the publicly traded. And then the annuity space there, obviously, as you get older, you get mortality credits. So the income an annuity would pay out gets greater as you get older, regardless of the interest rate environment, just the fact that you got older, what we call mortality credits. And they can provide you a lifetime income and potentially one that increases as well.
Well, lots of different options there, ladies and gentlemen. A great list of 8 high-level items that retirement planners need to think about and address in 2022. If you would like to go through these, that's all part of that optimized retirement plan there, offered by Chris McIntire at McIntire Retirement Services, Northwestern Ohio, your resource for sound planning, guidance, advice, and perspective. If you would like to take advantage of the opportunity for a complimentary review and retirement planning strategy session, pick up the phone, give a call. 800-868-1194. That's 800-868-1194. 800-868-1194. You can also always visit online, McIntyreRetirementServices.com. Chris, we always appreciate the guidance, the time, the perspective that you provide for us here on the program.
Hey, my pleasure, everybody. Thank you for listening today, and stay safe out there.
Visit McIntyreRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.
Any comments regarding safe and secure investments and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Indexed or fixed annuities are not designed for short-term investments and may be subject to caps, restrictions, fees, and surrender charges as described in the annuity contract.